Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar called 4 Ways Modern Credit Drives E-Commerce Success. I'm Debbie House, Editor-in-Chief of Retail Touchpoints, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. We're honored today to be joined by 3 executives, including Ty Collins from Rad Power Bikes, John Scrofano from Garmentory, and Len Eschweiler from Affirm, who will share insights into how retailers need to rethink their credit offerings. This webinar is the 6th in a series of 8 presented as part of the Retail Touchpoints 2017 Connected Consumer Series. During this series, attendees have had the opportunity to hear from leading industry experts who are discussing the most important topics on retailers' minds today. By registering for one session, attendees have access to all complimentary presentations, which are both live and on demand. We also welcome you to follow this and all other Connected Consumer Series webinars on Twitter using the CC Series hashtag. On this slide, you'll also find the Twitter handles for Retail Touchpoints and the session speakers. Today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. Right now, you should be viewing the On24 dashboard, which shows the live viewing screen. By clicking on the Questions widget on the right-hand side of the screen, you can type in questions during the live presentation and press Submit. You'll also find a widget named Resources under Questions. Here you can download assets our presenters have provided. All you have to do is click on the resource and it will automatically download. If you're not able to attend one or more of the sessions, they're all available free to all registrants. You can access them on demand at your convenience. To learn more, go to the Retail Touchpoint website. So in addition to joining the conversation online and submitting your questions on the On24 platform, we also welcome and encourage you to participate by letting us know how we're doing with our webinar series. We want to constantly improve the level of value we provide to you, our session attendees, so we've put together a very brief survey that will automatically launch once the session concludes. You also can complete and submit the survey by clicking on the survey icon in the taskbar on the bottom of your screen. The survey icon is circled here in red on this slide. So before signing off today, please just take a moment to complete this quick questionnaire. We appreciate and value your feedback and look forward to hearing from you. For those of you who might be new to Retail Touchpoints, here's a very quick overview. We're an all-digital media company publishing a weekly email and online newsletter, daily news, special reports, and multimedia presentations. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our weekly newsletter. And we welcome input and feedback through traditional means, both phone and email, and also social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And our website is www.retailtouchpoints.com. So quickly before I introduce today's speakers, I want to remind our audience that our presentation is slated for approximately 30 minutes with time for live questions at the end. We invite our audience to submit questions in the On24 questions area as they come to mind. Our presenters have agreed to stay online following the presentation to respond to your questions. I also want to point out a few other housekeeping items for the attendees. This webinar is being recorded and all attendees will receive an archive link to the presentation to go back and review or share with colleagues. In addition, the slides will be posted to SlideShare. So our speakers today consist of 3 industry experts. Ty Collins is co-founder, VP of Marketing and Sales at Rad Power Bikes, a consumer direct electric bike company based in Seattle, Washington. With a vast background in digital marketing and ad shops, Ty's agency experience has versed him in all of the latest trends in digital marketing, from data-driven to growth hacking, demand generation to thought leadership. Ty's constantly striving to maximize campaigns and win. John Scrofano is CEO of Garmentory, the global destination for young luxury. Garmentory's marketplace has over 350 of the world's best boutiques and emerging designers. Prior to Garmentory, he founded and sold OneWed, the 5th largest wedding planning platform at the time, garnering more traffic than Martha Stewart weddings. John graduated magna cum laude from Indiana University, Kelley School of Business. He's intensely curious, loves to build things, and spends a lot of time at the intersections of brand and data. He lives in Seattle with his wife and 2 young children. And finally, Len Eschweiler is Senior Vice President of Retail at Affirm, where he leads, implements, and develops sales and market strategies to drive Affirm's core business. Len has worked in technology since the dot-com days, having been an early executive in several e-commerce and media technology companies, scaling growth to drive multiple acquisitions. Before joining Affirm, Len led global revenue for Avangate, supporting more than 3,000 customers in EMEA, APAC, and North America. He previously spent 2 years at Amazon as the Managing Director of Amazon Services, which includes fulfillment by Amazon, product ads, and Amazon payments. He also served as MyBuy's SVP of Sales and Client Success and spent nearly a decade as a Vice President with e-commerce software provider MarketLiving. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Len to kick off the conversation. Welcome, Len.
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks for everyone joining and viewing our webinar today. So 4 ways modern credit drives e-commerce success. So we're going to share some insights, examples of modern commerce, define what modern commerce is, and show why it's a critical component to growing your business, delivering high levels of customer satisfaction, and providing sustained differentiation. As a starting point, we wanted to share some data about how consumers think about credit and debt and some of the uncertainty that they have and how that impacts their views on how they purchase, who they purchase from, and how they feel about their purchasing decisions after making a purchase. So we surveyed over 1,000 respondents straddling millennial and Gen X, or millennial and, yes, Gen X, between the ages of 22 and 44 to really explore their views on debt, credit, and again, their corresponding views on purchasing decisions. We found some striking results, and what we learned is that consumers do have some fear around credit card debt, and that really concentrates in the views of complexity of how APRs are calculated, how hidden fees, compounding interest, how those all exist to lead into some pretty startling results. We found that 60% of respondents moderately, very, or extremely worried about getting into debt. And a third of those that are fearful, or almost a third of those that are fearful about getting into debt, they say they just don't know how long it will take to pay them back, those purchases. And nearly 2/3 of those 60% that are fearful about getting into debt, 57% of those cited that getting in over their heads was the primary reason for that fear of actually looking at using a credit card, getting into debt for a purchase. And then probably even more staggering is 3 out of 4, or 72% of the respondents who have carried a credit card balance have worried about how much their purchases would end up costing total, including interest. So this has some pretty profound ramifications when we think about the issues underneath why a consumer opts to make a purchase or not make a purchase, and additionally the type of purchase that they're comfortable making. So to build on how that impacts the actual decision-making process of a consumer, and we look at how the fear of this uncertainty has caused some consumers to avoid credit. And I'll say that it's an important nuance when we think about credit, that whether a retailer is offering credit to their customers in the form of a credit card or a loan to pay over time, or a customer is purchasing with their credit card, there's still an element to credit in either of those types of transactions. And I would also say that consumers being responsible with their borrowing is a core value that we at Affirm definitely subscribe to. And so when we go through some of these stats where 36% of the respondents prefer to pay with cash, 29% are afraid that they'll spend more than they can afford, and then we get into 16% don't want to carry a balance, but many do, and then 15% just don't prefer credit products. When we look at responsible borrowing, again, that we view that as a very good thing. What we find underneath this is that many of these consumers have the purchasing power. They just want to make sure that when they make a decision that it's in their financial best interest, and they don't end up using some type of payment vehicle or credit vehicle that makes them feel uncertain about the confidence that they'll be able to really understand and afford that purchase, which can have some real ramifications, which we'll discuss, on abandonment rates, average order value, and really post-purchase sentiment that manifests itself in customer satisfaction and loyalty. So there's some real opportunities within this data as we think about how retailers can leverage this hunger that consumers have for transparent credit alternatives. In the survey, we found that 87% of the respondents expressed interest in a simple way to pay over time for large purchases that was not a credit card. And 68% of these respondents cited that knowing exactly how much I'll owe, this is a direct quote, knowing exactly how much I'll owe and when, including interest, as the most appealing element of a simple credit card alternative. So when we think about that, really addressing head-on some of these concerns that consumers have as they think about traditional credit card, and traditional credit products, there is a real opportunity underneath that to connect with customers in a very relevant and authentic way. At Affirm, our mission is to deliver honest, transparent financial products to improve lives. We're founded by a gentleman named Max Levchin. Max is one of the original founders and CTO of PayPal. And when we started Affirm, in part it was to deliver on many of the issues that we've just explored about consumer sentiment and fear about traditional credit and not completely understanding it. And we set out to do this very differently, and understanding that there are big portions of the population where their needs are really unmet on traditional banking and credit, on credit products. What we found in our journey is that we had this really exciting unintended consequence of driving material value for our retail partners. And that value of adding trust, transparency, people knowing exactly what they're paying for, having the flexibility to pay over time, and having a great experience that's simple, fast, and convenient, we found that those customers help reward the retailers that they purchased by converting more often by reducing abandonment, increasing average order value by buying products that they really wanted but feel now comfortable budgeting for those. Also bridging some connections between mobile and desktop purchasing, as well as helping combat price compression and discounting. Thinking about all these opportunities within modern credit to actually solve some of those problems and opportunities. So as a quick example of when we talk about building trust and we talk about transparency, one example here is looking at this fantastic modern couch, $1,500. What you can see is how Affirm works for a customer that wants to purchase this couch, and as they're determining if they can make that purchase, we make it very clear for them to see flexible terms, in this case 3, 6, or 12 months. And we show exactly how much the cost would be. There's no hidden fees around, deferred interest, penalty interest, or hidden fees, or complicated compounding interest over time that can limit the customer's confidence in feeling good about a purchase. And as we reviewed some of those stats, we can see that it's fairly significant that this is in the back of customers' minds as they're evaluating to make a purchase. And so bringing that to the forefront of the trust and the transparency and the clarity of exactly what a customer will be spending is well rewarded and well received by the customer. Additionally, we look at, from Affirm's perspective, being optimized for mobile. So one of the things with having a great customer experience, in addition to a retailer having fantastic products, having an elegant experience, reducing friction in that experience, part of that, when we get to mobile, it becomes really intensified because of the form factor. And we've made things really simple. So when we think about modern commerce, part of that is how easy it is to apply for that credit. And so from Affirm's perspective, we ask for 5 pieces of data: name, email address, date of birth, phone number, and last 4 of the customer's social. They click on that, tap on that, and in a real-time decision come back with the opportunity for them to have presented with flexible terms and knowing exactly what they'd pay up front. So there's a big opportunity here to reduce friction in the buying process with Affirm, and as you think about modern credit, particularly through the elegance and simplicity of the experience. So when we look back to the premise of the webinar and the topic of 4 ways that modern commerce can drive e-commerce success, we really look at this in the different areas of our pie chart here, these 4 critical areas of managing the customer life cycle. And we'll talk about how modern commerce fits and how Affirm fits underneath these different critical components. When we think about Acquire as it relates to credit and modern credit, is really the opportunity to unlock and connect with customers that either don't prefer traditional credit products, have concerns about using those traditional credit products, or are precluded from using those traditional credit products. And this is where we can actually add new to file by engaging with those customers in a very relevant, simple way that unlocks their potential to create a relationship with you as a retailer. The second critical piece on convert, and this is where we think about modern credit, and really as we look at our solution at Affirm, unlike a payment type or traditional credit product, it's really important to think about leveraging modern credit early as possible in the buyer journey to help inspire and motivate shopping intent prior to actually adding something to their basket. So this helps reduce not only abandonment, but it also increases average order value by a customer feeling more confident in their discovery process, what spend limits are, and being able, going back to our sofa example of saying, hey, I could afford that at $150 a month, that really influences shopping intent prior to adding to cart. Critical area. Then we look at retain, and the role that modern credit can really play in retention strategies. And retention is a big area that requires a fantastic experience to the customer, great value, incredible product and selection. But when we think about the experience component, it's not only the front-end transaction, but it's the downstream experience that a customer has after they've made the purchase. And from a modern credit perspective, having a very high-touch experience that is proactively reminding people about, these are some examples, proactively reminding somebody when payments are due, making it really simple for them to pay, not having hidden fees lurking in the background that's going to jump out and penalize them if they accidentally made a mistake. That is rewarded in very high levels of satisfaction and loyalty because of this premium experience that happens actual post-transaction. And then finally, to round out this 4th critical component of this customer life cycle and driving e-commerce success is optimize. And we think about this in two main work streams. One is modern credit, if done right, can provide a really fascinating view of your customers. When you overlay demographic, psychographic segmentation on top of credit mix, approvals, and take rates, and what that credit mix looks like, that can provide a really interesting foundation that's actionable to influence decisions about marketing spend, to decrease inefficiency and focus on the right marketing drivers that attract the right quality customer. The second piece of optimize that becomes really important when we think about the comment of conversion about communicating modern credit earlier in the buyer journey, this is a process of continual testing and iteration to see where we can provide modern credit less as the payment vehicle and really as a promotional and marketing element within campaigns, again, to delight and inspire customers earlier in their process. So there's a lot of testing that takes place to take full advantage of modern credit across this entire life cycle of acquisition, conversion, retention, and optimization. So I'm thrilled to introduce a co-presenter and customer, Rad Power Bikes. Rad Power Bikes creates very cool, very innovative, very high-quality electric bicycles, and I am excited for a co-presenter, Ty Collins, who Debbie gave an introduction to as the co-founder and VP of Marketing and Sales at Rad Power Bikes. Ty, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be a part of it. So, as mentioned, my name is Ty Collins. I'm one of the co-founders along with the VP of Marketing and Sales of Rad Power Bikes. Rad Power Bikes started, like a lot of the startups do, with pretty humble roots. It was really just a handful of kids that were experimenting with making these crazy contraptions called electric bikes. And after doing that for years, we basically discovered that we wanted to build a better mousetrap. We kind of wanted to produce what we wanted, that what we would want to buy, but just couldn't find in the market. So the biggest thing that we were seeing were there were really two different types of electric bikes on the market. You had your very, very low quality cheap ones, and then you had your very, very high-end expensive ones. But there wasn't what we wanted to buy / could afford. And the reason for that being that, especially in the bicycle industry, it's very deeply rooted in the traditional distribution channel. That being the manufacturer selling to a dealer, that dealer marking up and selling to retail, that retail marking up and selling to the consumer. So what we did is basically cut out the middlemen and took a consumer direct approach. So what that did is it essentially allowed us to sell at wholesale pricing, which means the end user is getting a really, really high quality performance bike at typically a mere fraction of what a very comparable bike on the market would be if they bought through those traditional channels.
So Ty, if I can jump back in, and thanks for the introduction. It's a very cool company. So if we can tie in our discussion about credit, what would you say is unique about your particular industry segment that made Affirm the right fit for you?
Yeah, so what's really unique about us and really kind of just the time we're in right now is we're really fortunate to be in an era where a lot of people are really seeing a value in kind of alternate forms of transportation, but specifically electric power. So even just 5 or so years ago, unfortunately, a lot of people kind of lumped in electric power with, solar and other things like that, which is, well, that's something that people out in the hills can do, but that's just not for me. And, with, things like Tesla, the Prius, even a lot of cities are using electric public transportation, people are seeing it as a real value add. At the same time, it's something that isn't, necessarily easily within reach of a lot of potential consumers in the U.S. So what's so great about Affirm and our partnership with them is we're able to kind of combine our already lower price points by going consumer direct with the option to break it down into payments over 3, 6, or 12 months. And it really makes the buying decision for a lot of consumers a lot easier. They can justify spreading out a payment over the course of 12 months a lot easier than they can, just making a payment right up front.
All right, terrific. So on this slide, we can see that, and because it's a relatively new industry segment, you're really focused on customer acquisition and conversion. So how does using the Affirm solution help you meet those needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting. The Affirm solution has honestly been one of the greatest marketing tools that we've had as a company. It's allowed us to position our bikes, again, as something that's an even more attainable and affordable option for people, and it's allowed us to market to a lot of groups that it just wasn't an option for in the past. So previously, we have the type of product that, especially on social media, is very, very eye-catching, very appealing, very shareable. And a lot of people would see it, they think it's really cool, but then they would find out the price point, which is typically going to be about $1,500. And while that is a lot more affordable than many, many, if not most, comparable bikes on the market, we'll be the first to say it's absolutely not a cheap price point. So unfortunately, we always did have that drop off of people that, oh, well, it's cool, I would love to have it, but it's just not something I can do. So with the Affirm solution, we were able to kind of package this all together into, it's something practical, it's something that's fun, it's something that's hip, it's something that's sexy, and it's something that you can get for as low as X, per month. So it really allowed us to bring in kind of new sets of eyeballs that we might not have been able to before. And then for that group, and even for other groups that are finding our website not through messaging about Affirm, once they're on the site, our messaging is really able to kind of reinforce that affordable price point decision-making offer and really make it something that, someone can feel okay doing. People can justify when they see exactly what the price is going to be per month. And it's just so nice knowing that we can, with all honesty, say, what you see is what you get. You're never going to get any hidden charges, hidden fees, and people respond, really, really well to that.
So yeah, transparency seems to be a great value here. So we're looking at some statistics. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the results that you've seen?
Absolutely, yeah. So, pretty much right off the bat, if you look, kind of month over month or months over months, we saw pretty much an immediate increase of over 21% in our sales, that being tied directly to just entire new markets being opened up that we were able to hit because of Affirm, and people really being able to justify spending a little bit more than they maybe would normally feel comfortable doing so. What's really interesting is it not only allowed us to kind of hit those markets that maybe wouldn't have been able to afford a flat payment up front. So you can see, we had 50% of our buyers being subprime or developing credit, but it also gave us a huge increase, 160% in our super prime applicants as well. So that kicked in once we started offering our 0% promotion. That, we believe, is being tied to really just kind of hitting that almost, it would be silly not to make a purchase at this point. You've been looking at it for a long time. It's, even nice broke up payments over 12 months, and now to add in 0% on top of that, it's almost like it's just too good to pass up. So it's been really great because it's allowed us to not only kind of market to new groups, but those new groups are kind of having covering a lot of the board, both with the subprime and the super prime, which is really great to see.
Awesome. So as a quick follow-up, in addition to talking about, the results that are advancing the business, one of the issues that a lot of shoppers are going to be asking about is the security of their customer information. Do you get a lot of questions from customers and potential customers about their data security?
We actually do, yeah. So, a lot of the people that are leveraging Affirm are people that, might not typically be ones that are making purchases online, using credit cards, things like that. So the security is really, really important to people. They want to make sure that, the site that they're purchasing through is trusted, and even more so, the kind of the payment method they're using is trusted. And Affirm does not only a really good job of making people feel very, very safe, very protected, but the amount of information, as mentioned earlier, that a customer or a potential customer has to give is very, very minimal. And for the most part, it's something that people feel very safe and comfortable giving. It's not asking for the kind of standard, really, really in-depth, you're being interrogated by the FBI security question. So it's a level that a lot of people feel very comfortable using, and that, again, just makes it that much easier for us to encourage people to use it and to market it, because it's a platform that's very, very safe, very reliable, and we can, with a lot of confidence, recommend our customers to use.
Excellent. So thank you so much, Ty. And now we're going to shift gears, so to speak, and move away from talking about the electric bicycle segment to luxury retail. And John Scrofano is going to join us now. He's the CEO of Garmentory. John, can you just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love this image that we have on here. It's from our spring editorial shoot. I promise we sell more clothes than just those that are inspired by 1988 and really awesome wigs. So Garmentory, we're a marketplace of contemporary and emerging fashion designers. As we said earlier, we've got over 350 bricks and mortar retail boutiques or emerging fashion designers in this young luxury segment. So if you think about department stores like Barney's or Nordstrom, that's the segment that we're in. We actually call it young luxury, but our stuff is actually made in fairly small batches, has a really great story behind it, and it's fairly unique. It's for the customer who kind of says, I don't want to wear the same thing everybody else is wearing. They have a point of view, and this stuff is really tied to their identity. So our marketplace brings all of those goods from those boutiques that was kind of tied up in those local boutiques and brings it online in order to be able to have a lot more people access it. Our team, real quickly about us, we're both natively fashion and technology. So we have both very brand forward, and very data driven as an organization. So that's everything from the merchandising side and product and editorial, all the way down to things like conversion rates on checkout flow and payment options. We just think about all of those things. And I know that you're not really supposed to read from a slide, but I am going to read from this slide for a second because I think it really sums up what's really important, and part of our big thesis is that we think Amazon will own commodity retail. So anything that's price and convenience, Amazon's going to win. And we don't want to fight them on that. But there's this huge world of shopping out there where consumers don't want that commodity stuff. They don't want the same thing everybody else has. They really want these beautiful, thoughtful, unique items wrapped in a really delightful shopping experience. And so that's really where we work, as we try to work at unlocking the world's best merchandise and shopping experiences. And so we obsess over customer experience. Every single aspect of the customer experience, from the product that they're seeing, from the photos of the product, from the editorial, from how we package it, and then of course their experience, both on web and on mobile and any other way that they're going to interact with us, whether that's Instagram or whatever of those things. And payment ends up becoming legitimately a pretty significant part of that. It's the end of the buying process, but not the end of the customer journey. And so we think about payment a lot, and that's part of where Affirm came in. For us specifically, when we've looked at different payment options, of course you have credit card, and we're customers of Max's previous company, PayPal. Our European customers really love PayPal. That one was a surprise for us. But our customer, very specifically, 25 to 50, mostly women who work and tend to have average household incomes that are a bit higher than normal, and because our apparel tends to be, $100 to $600, it tends to appeal to a higher household income. But we also have a segment of customers, and this is a little bit surprising to us actually. There's this big social movement that we see of customers wanting to buy fewer, nicer, higher quality things. And for those customers especially, this is on the conversion side of things, FICO scores and credit cards don't actually properly assess their risk. They don't actually really act for the customers in the way that those customers want them to. And so Affirm has been really excellent at sitting here. And we didn't know that this was actually happening to us until after we implemented Affirm. So, Len's like nice marketing speak earlier about these 4 things that actually happen. We're like, yeah, maybe, and then we implemented it, and it was like, oh, look at that. That wasn't just a PowerPoint slide. And so specifically on the conversion side, there's this really big group of prospective customers that they wanted, they wanted access to our products, and a credit card wasn't the way that they could do it, and Affirm kind of unlocked the ability for us to be able to get there. And then as we move kind of onto the retention side, you see there, one of the things that we've also been surprised about is we do an NPS score, which is a Net Promoter Survey, every single time after a customer purchases. because we really want to know what worked well with the experience and what didn't, whether they would recommend us to friends, and if we're tracking properly with delivering the customer experience that's going to earn their enduring loyalty over time. And no one ever mentions payment except for Affirm, and we were surprised to see that too. We have a group of customers who always write in, "We are so glad that you have Affirm." Like, they actually write it into the NPS comment. Like, it takes a lot of effort for someone to just do more than a score and actually write something. And you know that there's 10 customers for every one customer actually writes something. And those folks, in terms of the retention, has actually been really important. They actually, we are earning their loyalty over time, in part because we have this payment option.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we typically hear more about people sharing their comments when they're negative comments. So, being able to get some feedback that's positive and having them go out of their way to share it is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. And in terms of like conversion and retention generally, we didn't also just want to offer 1,000 different options. This wasn't for us about implementing 25 different payment methods because somebody might prefer this or that or this or that. The customer experience, it has to be simple too. And so we really just have 3 payment options. It's credit cards, it's PayPal, and it's Affirm. And Affirm's really been able to, because it's simple and because it's one of the few options, it's able to declutter the end of the transaction experience for our customer, which is one of the reasons that we keep it nice and simple. And you can see some of these stats here. We've had, with Affirm customers in particular, they have a 60% higher average order value. And to some extent, we would expect a little bit of that because it's a person who's typically buying something that they wouldn't just put on as a regular credit card transaction. But 60% was much higher surprise than we were expecting. 3x increase in approvals versus traditional credit. And then this is the one that we love the most because we are so obsessive about customer retention. It's that 50% of Affirm users become repeat purchase visitors, and that's higher than our site-wide average. We don't have anything else to attribute that to.
That's great, and it's really interesting to see, when you compare your goals of conversion and retention versus Rad Power's goals of acquisition and conversion, and then the different the different benefits and results that you're seeing. It's a great comparison of how different industry segments and different businesses can improve overall loyalty and conversion and just overall business value from using something like this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, I want to thank Len and Ty and John. It was a great presentation. We're going to move on to questions and answers in a minute or two. First, I just want to remind the group, if you can, please share your feedback. You can click on the survey link, or you can wait until the end of the presentation, and the survey will launch automatically. We really appreciate your feedback, so please feel free to fill out this real quick survey before you leave today. So right now, have some time for questions with Ty, John, and Len. I'm going to kick off the questions. Again, I want to remind everyone, please feel free to type your questions in. If we're not able to get to your specific question, our speakers can follow up with you after the presentation. So please, if you have any questions, please feel free to share them at any time before we conclude today. So Len, the first question that's come in, the first attendee wants to know, does Affirm allow shoppers who have little to no credit history? Does Affirm allow those types of shoppers the ability to obtain credit, make purchases through using Affirm?
Thanks for the question, Debbie. It's really interesting when we look at, one of the problems when we look at traditional credit risk modeling is that the majority, if not all of it's really based on the FICO model, and most people know their FICO score. That's an underlying model of how risk decisions are made to underwrite and extend credit to a consumer. In part of our in part of our mission to create honest, transparent financial products, we actually created our own underwriting models that aren't based on FICO. And what that allows us to do is extend a much broader reach to customers of all credit quality across that traditional sort of FICO bands, if you will, and credit scores. And that includes not only super prime and prime that generally have access to some of your more favorable rates, but when you get down into subprime and thin file to the question, this gives us an opportunity to approve at much higher rates. And I'll share with you a quick data point, particularly if you're a business that's looking to connect with millennials. The average millennial credit score is between 620 and 625. In a traditional FICO risk model, that puts that customer squarely in a subprime bucket, which means they're either not going to get approved for that traditional credit product, or they're not going to be treated very fairly with the rates that they're provided if they are approved, assuming they even wanted a traditional credit product. So yes, we do provide the opportunity for customers that are developing credit, thin file, are subprime, but we believe they're high trajectory potential customers. Just for a myriad of reasons, they haven't either been taking advantage of traditional credit and building a credit history, or other examples could be that they haven't chose to participate in traditional credit products as they're out building their financial life. So yeah, that's a big advantage and opportunity that Affirm can offer, and it's really driven behind the scenes through smarter underwriting that's not FICO dependent.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting because it's so hard to get credit when you're starting out if you don't have credit, but how can you get credit, how can you get credit if you don't have credit? So you're definitely answering that problem, so that's really great. So the next question, I think each one of you could probably answer, and we may have addressed this a little bit during the presentation, but one of our attendees wants to know if the ability to use this solution motivates shoppers to spend more and increase average order value.
So we do see an average order value increase, as we said on the slide, of 60% over our normal using the Affirm product. To be 100% like data clean on it, we can't tease that out very exactly on whether that's just Affirm or whether that is the customer happened to choose Affirm after they had already selected something of higher average order value. So I can't give a 100% answer. It's just the data isn't totally clean on us on that one.
Yeah, then for us, to a certain extent, it's a little anecdotal. But what we're finding is it's not as much a higher average order value, just because the style of product we have, people are usually buying one or not buying one. There are some accessories involved, but we really just kind of focus in on the meat and potatoes being the bike itself. What we're hearing anecdotally from a lot of people is just that, I couldn't be making a purchase from you guys if it wasn't for Affirm. So it's not as much that they were going to place an order anyways, but now they're placing it and they're adding a little bit more to the cart. It really is for a lot of people that an order just wouldn't be possible, but because of financing, they can justify it and make the purchase.
Yeah, it definitely varies based on industry segment. And Len, have you heard any other feedback you can share from any other customers?
Yeah, I would build on that from I think that's absolutely right. It really depends on a customer's, their selection and their product catalog can have a lot of influence on what levers of value can Affirm impact. And when, to Ty's description of larger considered item, the real value comes in unlocking that potential to help convert, reduce abandonment. When we have a broader selection, such as John's, and when you look at other sort of broader but curated selection where you've got bundling, collection-based merchandising, opportunities to, and potential retailers that have opportunities to upsell into sort of higher quality items, that's where you'll really start to see increases in average order value. But the thing that we found to really drive and help encourage that behavior is to make sure that we're messaging to the customer earlier in their buyer journey. So they start to, their shopping intent, and they start to think about how they could responsibly purchase that item or group of items and feel good about that purchase. And the earlier that you can start get that dialogue happening in their buyer journey, the more impact you can have on order value, either through upselling or through more line items in the basket. Right.
So, do you, Len, suggest to customers, that they place information about the Affirm capability on the home screen of the website, or in any particular places on the site?
Yeah, we found there's lots of testing to be done around this, which is really an exciting part to see what resonates with a given customer and their customer. But just at a baseline, really being connected on the product detail page to show starting as or as low as, to start creating that mindset into checkout, into payment, and then bringing that up into different page types. Home page can be a really interesting place to message, as can category pages. And the other thing we're doing with many customers are then integrating the messaging for Affirm within retargeting ad units and retargeting emails. And the different touch points that someone has within their customer, using this, again, is really sort of an element of a promotional or marketing campaign element to connect with a customer in a meaningful way, and a kind of a pervasive way across the different touch points with that customer.
Yeah, really good point. So tying down, I know we talked a little bit about the different variety of payment and credit options that you're offering. So can you just talk in a little bit more detail? How are you deciding, if and when you're offering other payment and credit options to your consumers?
Yeah, so we honestly started out just fairly simply, and we were solely accepting payments just through credit card through our e-commerce platform. We saw, kind of a need for another type of payment method, just because we know, one size doesn't fit everyone, and it honestly just worked out really well that we found Affirm. It kind of doubled as a way for us to give people a second option to buy, and then, importantly, as I was mentioning before, it really just kind of leveled the playing field and would allow us to, have a way for people to break up their payments, make it a lot easier for them, and also gave us, that great marketing tool.
For us, we were strictly credit card at first. We actually had customer demand for PayPal. We were getting emails about it. Also, we were getting emails, as I said, all European customers, for some reason especially, don't trust credit cards. So we implemented PayPal, and then as we were implementing PayPal, we kind of said, is this all there is? Should there be something else? And that's when we found Affirm, or Affirm found us, I suppose. And we actually continued to search after that, right? Is there a fourth or a fifth option that we should have that customers really want? And we spent a lot of time thinking about the customer experience, and launched with PayPal and Affirm, and have been really happy with just that kind of three solution options. It's not too many options for the customer, but it's enough that we are able to touch each one of our customer types.
Excellent. Yeah, and as Len said, you can always test out different combinations, I suppose, to see what resonates with your shoppers. So I think we're going to have to wrap up. I just want to remind everyone that please, if you have specific questions, send them through, and our speakers will reach out to you afterwards to answer your questions. So just to wrap up, Len, one final question. We talked about a bunch of different topics. Are there some typical questions, a couple of typical questions that you receive from prospective retail customers that you could share with our audience that might help them when they're making this decision?
Yeah, a couple sort of thematic questions that we get are, one centers on what we had touched on, which is how do you really take full advantage of the Affirm solution and connect with these different touch points, and again in a relevant way to really drive the right results and do it in a way that's consistent with the business's brand experience. So we do a lot of great work with our customers around that. The second sort of thematic that we get is really diving into when we think about this idea of smarter underwriting, how does that all work? And so we have some really fun conversations around how does that math work, and then how do you leverage that information to not only get the most out of the Affirm solution, but leverage us as an opportunity to have an impact in a kind of broader view across the business. And then the other thing that comes up, I would say thematically, is we look at just the ease of, how long would it take and how quickly can it take to integrate. And that's something that we haven't touched on today, but the integration is relative to other things that many retailers are thinking about. We're talking days and weeks, not months and years to implement. So it's a very fast time to value. And as we saw in some of the examples today, it's a very immediate impact that often will then fund and fuel other initiatives that our customers have. So those are some of the thematic things that we hear.
All right, terrific. So John and Ty, did you want to follow up with any final thoughts, talk about the implementation process or any of the other topics that Len just mentioned?
Yeah, mentioning implementation, one of the really nice things was just the ease of use of getting it going. We have a lot of different integrations with different, partners and companies, and it always is kind of a breath of fresh air when it's, a pretty simple process to get going. Another really nice thing is they have a really great library of, headers and different options, whether it's product pages, collection pages, things like that, where you can, pretty easily implement code for different functionality, which is always really nice, and great to be able to have different options like that.
Yeah, for us with implementation, we have a pretty complicated platform because we have a marketplace of stores. So if a customer places an order with products from multiple stores, it's a single checkout, but there's products coming in from multiple places. They can refund only part of it. We have to, how do you deal with credits? And we have to shard up those orders a lot of different ways. So our implementation was a little more complicated, but we have a really great engineering team, and the Affirm team was pretty responsive to being able to figure out how to implement those things alongside of us and be able to trigger refunds properly and all the things that go along with that. So fortunately, they were flexible with us to be able to implement on a little bit more of a complex system. It wasn't just a couple of lines of code or anything like that a more simple e-commerce platform might be able to use.
All right, terrific. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much to Ty and to John for sharing information about your specific industry segments and your businesses. It was really fascinating, and thanks again to Len also. It was great learning about how to implement modern credit. So with that, I want to thank all of our attendees as well. You have a few more seconds if you have a question you want to send in to have our speakers respond to. And please, again, complete the survey before you leave today. Our next Connected Consumer Series session is scheduled for tomorrow at 12 noon. It's called The $1 Million Retail Question, What Do Consumers Actually Want? So please tune in to listen to that session as well. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you.